Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And a couple of massive rumors exploded online over the weekend. Nintendo might be a little bit mad at Mario right now because, as a plumber, he isn't exactly doing a great job. There's leaks all over the place, and by this point, it really wouldn't shock me at all if we get gameplay footage for the Switch 2 before it even releases. Stick around, though, and we'll talk about the latest Switch 2 leak, which includes a pretty interesting feature if this turns out to be true. Xbox, though, they might have news as well because allegedly Xbox is planning to cut this generation a little bit short with a brand new console that Transformers would apparently be proud of. The only question here, though, is that despite this rumor blowing up online, is there an actual reason to believe any of this is true? Well, we're going to answer all of that today, but let's just go and get right into things, starting off with PlayStation. Over the past few weeks, we've gotten a few breadcrumbs that Sony might be bringing back some of their dormant IP. PlayStation boss Herman Hulst, at the very least, didn't just outright dismiss this idea in a recent interview. And now, according to Andy Robinson from the Video Game Chronicle, there's an actual reason for that. According to what he's heard behind the scenes, Sony is in fact working on quote-unquote at least a couple of these older games. He referred to them as deep-cut, smaller IP. And that does kind of beg the question, what exactly qualifies as smaller IP? I mean, are we talking about games like Patapon and Loco Roco, both of which are excellent games? Go check those out. But, I mean, those are about as small as it gets when it comes to internally developed PlayStation games. Or instead, are we talking about AA style of games like Sly Cooper and Jak and Daxter? I mean, those are definitely games that can make a big splash with a moderate budget. And that's the thing. It's honestly insane to me that just so many big-time publishers have abandoned these type of games and have opted to primarily focus on $200, $300, or even $400 million budget games. I mean, those type of games have to sell like 5+ million copies for razor-thin profits. It doesn't seem sustainable, and definitely not on its own account, whereas these smaller-scale games, they can reach a smaller audience and still bring in a good amount of money. They also have the advantage of taking far, far less time to make. So they can also fill out gaps in their pipeline with these type of games. And when you look at Sony from just last year in 2024, one issue that they ran into was that they didn't have a lot of first-party titles. So they had to supplement their catalog with third-party exclusive partnerships. But if they had better diversified their lineup with smaller games scattered throughout, thankfully they at least had Astrobot for that. But with more games like that, well, then suddenly they'd be able to release games more frequently, and it would kind of alleviate them from having those type of first-party droughts. So there's a lot of perks that comes along with making smaller-scale games, and I think Sony's new leadership is starting to slowly learn that. Their live service games outside of Helldivers 2 haven't really had a lot of success, and their big AAA games are just taking far, far too long to make. I want to hear from you all, though. If Sony does, in fact, bring back some of their older franchises, which ones gets your vote? Now, there's something strange happening over at PlatinumGames. They're the makers behind Bayonetta, Astral Chain, and just the absolute masterpiece, Nier Automata. Yeah, there's a lot of love for this studio. But if you've been paying close attention, there seems to be some internal strife within the studio and how they creatively approach their games. Its co-founder, Hideki Kamiya, recently left PlatinumGames to form Clovers over at Capcom to work on the Okami sequel. Now, that alone isn't necessarily a red flag per se. We see people leave studios all the time. But there's two things that stands out about his departure. The first is his actual statement, which reads, "If I was satisfied at Platinum, then I wouldn't have left. There's a way I believe games should be made, a philosophy, a mindset of how games should be made. Koyama approached me, and we shared the same mindset and philosophy about game development." So he seemingly indicates that he wasn't able to fully unlock his creative ability over at PlatinumGames. Even more so is that the Metal Gear Rising director Kenji Saito, the Astral Chain director Takehisa Tora, and the Anarchy Reigns director Masaki Yamanaka all removed PlatinumGames from their social media handles just last month. This could potentially mean that they've departed PlatinumGames as well. and maybe even possibly followed Hideki Kamiya over to his new studio. In fact, he recently stated that he does feel responsible for the people that he left behind at PlatinumGames, and would give them an opportunity if they wanted to follow him. He said, if there was one thing that I'm worried about, it's the fact that I was the vice president and chief game designer of PlatinumGames. And so with me quitting, I worry about people there, the staff there. Of course, if they're motivated and happy at Platinum, I believe that's the right path for them. But if there are others whose mindset aligns more with what we're building here at Clover's, we want to welcome them and provide a path for them too. I see that as a responsibility I have to those people after leaving Platinum. So, you can kind of take all of this as you will, but there is a question about PlatinumGames and the direction that they're currently heading in, including their CEO, who previously revealed that they still have aspirations for more live service titles despite the catastrophic failure that was Babylon's Fall. So, yeah, when you combine that information with what we now know today, there does seem to be a lot of questions about PlatinumGames and what their future holds. At the same time, though, Clover's sounds like a very promising studio, and that Okami sequel will hopefully live up to their talent. Okay, so let's go talk about Xbox, because they were hit by a very intriguing rumor over the weekend, which claimed to have information about the next Xbox console. So this comes from Ghost of Hope, and this rumor blew up when Insider Gaming decided to run this story on their website. Now, this person apparently is a well-respected Call of Duty leaker, and they allegedly have sources within Activision, which, of course, is now owned by Xbox. So theoretically, there is a paper trail for this person to get their hands on inside Xbox information. Let's just go and get to the actual leak, though, and we'll just read it here. He said, "Take this with a huge grain of salt. I'm hearing that the next Xbox console is still coming in 2026 and will be called Xbox Prime. Still unclear if it's a code name or the actual name. I've heard Infinity Ward's next Call of Duty is still being considered a day one release for this." Now, it is important to keep in mind that he said to take this information with a huge grain of salt. But this is definitely not the first time that we've heard about this 2026 rumor. There have been rumblings that Xbox is targeting a 2026 launch. But Xbox Prime, that's new information that we haven't really heard before. Now, personally, if this is true, which is a big if, we'll come back to that here in just a moment, but if it's true, probably not the worst name for Xbox, but hey, that's part of the course for them. Personally, I think Xbox and Nintendo have been competing to see who can come up with the worst console names possible. And, well, Xbox, they seemingly won that competition. Nintendo, at the very least, seems to have improved on that front with the Switch to the Switch 2, whereas Xbox, I can't really say the same thing. There's no name that they could come up with that would shock me by this point, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But in this case, Jez Corden responded and said there's no such thing as Xbox Prime launching in 26. So what I'll just kind of say here is that if you've heard about this rumor, it blew up online these past few days, so there's a good chance that you may have. Well, I wouldn't really look into it that much. Even Ghost himself said in a separate post that he posted this rumor for somebody to corroborate, to confirm, or to deny it. Well, apparently somebody denied it. So, he didn't even seem all that confident about this in the first place. So I wouldn't start calling the next Xbox Prime. Now, with that said, I fully expect more information for the next Xbox to leak out throughout 2025. We've already talked a lot about their future plans because some of that information has leaked out online in just the last 4 weeks, and it kind of sounds like their next Xbox might be completely different. They'll have a handheld, and then they'll have this PCS console-like experience that runs on an Xbox OS. Theoretically, that could give consumers the ability to play Steam games on the next Xbox console, and I think that would be enticing for a lot of people out there to have everything to just be combined into one singular console experience. So as soon as we hear something a little bit more legitimate, of course, I'll let you all know as soon as possible, and that's why you're subscribed. And if you're not, make sure to hit that subscribe button below. Now, as for Nintendo, they were also hit by a leak, but this time I believe this one is 100% legitimate. Images of the Switch 2 Joycon found its way online over the weekend, and you can see it here. What leads people to believe that these images are in fact real is because it has all of its markings on the back. So if I were to guess, yeah, this seems like the real thing, and that would mean that there are Switch 2 units floating around right now. Nintendo is probably manufacturing these by the millions, and when that happens, things like this leak out. It's difficult to keep this type of information a secret when you have this anticipated product and you have all of these large manufacturers working on just so many units. Now, that could also indicate a soonish release, which is what I'm personally hoping for. But right now, the most fascinating thing about this leak is that it may have also leaked a big-time feature that we've yet to hear about. I mean, for the most part, these images don't really reveal much that we don't already know. I mean, it's cool to see it and everything, but, you know, we know that it's going to be larger. It seemingly comes with an 8-inch display. Of course, the Joy-Con is going to be larger, and we've known for a while that they have magnetic rails. Every single leak, every single rumor that we've seen for a year says the same thing. It has magnetic rails. Now, something these images do reveal, though, is that one side will be blue, and from the previous leak by Next Handheld, it appears the other side will be orange. Here's a mock-up of what this will potentially look like. This was posted up by NecroFelipe. But the one thing that we haven't heard about until now is this infrared or optical sensor that sits on the side. People are speculating that this could act like an optical sensor from a mouse, which that could actually be a significant development if true. Theoretically, that would mean that you could detach your Joy-Cons and play your games with an almost mouse-like experience. That would suddenly breathe new life into specific genres that typically perform better on a PC because a mouse is just much more accurate than an analog stick. Genres like first-person shooters and RTS games tend to play better with a mouse. It would also give console developers a way to implement new ideas into their games, and you know, as we all know, that's something that Nintendo loves to do. They like to innovate with new quirky ideas for their consoles. They've been doing this pretty much since the Wii. The Wii had motion controls. The Wii U had its tablet. The 3DS had 3D. You had, of course, the Switch being a hybrid console, and now this could possibly be that new innovative feature that we have just kind of come to expect from Nintendo consoles. Either which way, though, I mean, Nintendo really needs to reveal this thing because, yeah, it's not going to be all that long before gameplay or something like that leaks out online, and Nintendo's going to be very upset if something like that happens. Now, hopefully, though, we'll get that official reveal here within the next 4 weeks. Anyways, though, that's me for this episode, but until next time, make sure to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and peace out.